Today we're going to talk about the collapse of the Roman Republic. Really? Come on in, Pat. All right, so we'll start in just a minute talking about that, but first we're going to do our review because we always do our review. Last week was really interesting. Who remembers what we talked about?
I missed it.
We didn't talk about pirates. We talked about the Etruscans, remember? We think of the Roman Empire or the Roman civilization as being strongly influenced by Greece, and they were. But it doesn't come to them directly. It comes to them through who? The Etruscans. So this is the Etruscan civilization. And where's Rome?
Like a little city-state number.
Exactly. Yes, exactly, Edith. It's a little tiny farming village, and it doesn't come about until something really fabulous happens. Do you remember the story? I know Pat probably remembers the story.
Oh, is that the one with the wolf and Romulus?
Yes.
Romulus and Remus.
Yes. Pat was very, very impressed by that story last week.
Raised by a wolf.
Yeah, raised by a wolf. Yeah, so you remember that Rhea Silvia, the Vestal Virgin, had a visit by the god of war, and that resulted in twins being born, these two boys, who we know as Romulus and Remus. And then a whole bunch of stuff happens, but because we're doing review, we're going to skip over that. And they decided, once they figured out who they were, that they were going to establish their own kingdom. And what happened? Did that go smoothly?
No.
What happened?
Everybody wanted to kill it.
They fought over it, right? They fought over it. Romulus wants to start the capital he wants right here on Palatine Hill, but Remus is arguing he wants another location. They fight, and Remus dies as a result of that. So the first king of Rome is who? Yes, and he names it after himself, so it is called Roma. It's called Roma, and even though it's a monarchy, there's a monarchy there, there's also something else immediately set in place right away.
The Senate.
Exactly, yeah. The Senate is there. Romulus appoints 100 senators, or we've been calling them patricians, and these are just the wealthiest people of the area. So these are wealthy people of the area. Is there like a clear path in front of you, Elena? Like there's not a cord or anything, is there?
No cord.
All right, I just don't know if I should turn on the light or anything. Okay. Well, hi everybody.
I'm glad it wasn't the last.
All right, so we know that the Senate's already in place, and it's in place from the absolute foundation, and that is with the kings, the time of the kings. Who remembers how many kings there were until they had had enough? 7. There were 7 kings, just 7 kings. And
For each hill.
one king for each hill. That's a very good observation,
That's a
Judy.
good way to remember it.
That's a very good way to remember it, yeah, because it's, yeah, excellent. Okay, so the last king is a tyrant. All right, he takes the throne by force. He murders the king that was on the throne before him, calling him a usurper, when this king is himself the usurper. And we had a little fun with his name, Tarquinius Usurpus, at least I did. I just enjoyed saying that several times. So what do they do? They exile him. He's exiled, and now they have to come up with something new, right? They need something new. And who's inspiring them? What's happening at this point in time?
The Etruscan.
Well, the Greeks have developed a democracy, and so the Romans, who are essentially Etruscans, they come up out of the Etruscan civilization, they developed something very similar, and this is the symbol, meaning the Senate and the people of Rome. The Senate and the people of Rome. All right, the senators are already in place. They're happy to start taking over things that the king had formally taken over, and this is going to be for them and for the people. This is their hierarchy. And we know that we basically can break it down into two classes, right? We have the patricians and the who? The plebeians, the plebs. Yes. And it's the patricians that have all the power. The plebs don't. So the plebs had to go on strike. Remember, they went on strike?
Yeah.
They wouldn't do anything. They shut the city down. And so now the patricians had to acquiesce. And little by little, over time, they developed a system where the plebeians also have some rights. We know that there are different levels, additional levels of classifications in Roman culture. That's the freedmen, and then there's the slaves. And there's a huge problem with slaves. There's overpopulation because of the slaves. As this is going on, as this is evolving, Rome is also taking over lands, right? And when they're taking over lands, they're taking over people. And so the city of Rome is just swelling. The population is swelling. In times of emergency, you can have what? A dictator, and the dictator is only in power for the emergency to last no longer than 6 months. Yeah, so who left? So that was 6 months. And the leader of the Senate, the leaders of the Senate was the consul, and there's 2 of them, and how long are they in power?
A year.
Yes, exactly. They're in power for 1 year, and then they cannot be re-elected. They are elected by the Senate, and they serve 1 term. So when the plebs rebelled, and the patricians weren't getting any services, they designed a system whereby one of the plebs was able to represent the what?
The rest of the place.
Yes, the rest of the people, so that they would go into the Senate and they were able to plead their case. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. As a result of that, after many, many, many years, we had laws, and the laws were written down. All right, we had a little bit of fun last week reading some of the laws. They were very, very funny. I don't know if there's any other funny ones.
I now know why all the trees look so strange in Rome.
Oh, the trees look strange in Rome because they wrote down all these laws.
Branches of the tree shall be pruned all around to a height.
Oh, yeah. Look at this one. Women, even though they are of full age, because of their levity of mind, shall be under guardianship.
Except Vestal Virgin.
Except for Vestal virgins.
How'd that work out?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I'm sure that went over well.
some of these laws are
Look at that. There
so
should not be
disrespectful
intermarriage
of
between
people.
plebeians and patricians.
but eventually, so there shall not be intermarriage between the plebeians and the patricians, but that was overturned eventually. Now, all of this took, a long time, many, many years. Hi, Conrad. For it to develop. So that did change. That law did change, and there was marriages between patricians and plebs. Okay, so now look at what's happening to Rome. Look at in green.
Oh, it got bigger.
Yeah, it got bigger, didn't it? It's turning into an empire, and the Etruscan people are getting what? Absorbed into, yes, into. A lot of the senators are Etruscan. Some of the kings, in the time of the kings, were Etruscan. It's the same people, the same people. And again, we talked about the slaves. Slavery becomes a huge problem. The city of Rome at this time is overpopulated. There is a problem with what could you imagine? Food, sanitation, housing, land, all of those things. All of those things are becoming a huge problem and plays a factor in what we're talking about today. All right? We also talked last week about the Spartacus rebellion. Remember that? It was pretty amazing, and it was astounding at the time, because do you remember how long it lasted? How long were the slaves able to hold off the Roman army?
I forgot.
Remember, Rome thought they'd be able to take care of this in a day?
Went on for almost 10 years, didn't it?
3 years.
3 years. That
Yes.
was longer than that.
Yeah, 3 years. So they held off the Roman army for 3 years. So it was a lot more serious and severe than they thought it was going to be originally. And then last week we talked about these 3 men as playing a role in the fall of the Roman Republic, okay? There's Crassus and Pompey. Those are the 2 guys that were involved in putting down the Spartacus rebellion. And then this 3rd person here is Julius Caesar. We didn't really talk about him last week because we're going to talk about him this week. All right, Julius Caesar was born in 100 BCE, died in 44 BCE. You probably all know the date. Yes, exactly. Yes, it's a very famous date. Do you know that his name is not Julius Caesar? Or it is, but that wasn't what his parents named him when he was born. His name is Gaius. Very popular Roman name. Gaius is his name. Julius is the clan name. And Caesar is the family name. All right, so it just, you break it down like that, and that will identify you. If you are of nobility, that becomes important, because if you want to be a patrician, you have to prove what?
That you belong to that.
Patronage, right? You have to prove that you belong, you're a member of one of the original 100 senators that were appointed by Romulus. So that's why that becomes very important. So what is his story? He's central to the fall of the Roman Republic. His father dies very young, so he is of a family that has some nobility, but they're not wealthy.
No.
They're not all wealthy. His family is not. And this adds an additional mark against him, because if you don't have a male sponsor to help you in your political career, you're in trouble. He needs somebody on the inside. And when his father dies, when Julius is 15 years old, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have anybody in there, introducing him to the right people, influencing other people, getting him bumped up in succession. So he's got to make his own way. He thinks he's going to do this by entering into a marriage with a young woman. They're both 16. They're both 16 years old. I find that, I know, back then that was completely acceptable. But I find that hard to think. So they're both 16 years old, but she's from a family who is a member of the political fraction that's in power at the time. So he's making a political alliance with this marriage. But, how does politics go?
Ebbs and waves.
Ebbs and waves, yes, ebbs and waves. And so shortly after this great marriage into the seat of power, well, it shifts. It shifts, and that family is no longer in power. And so he finds himself at a great disadvantage, and so much so that he has to get out of Rome. And if you're a young man and you have to get out of Rome, where would you run to?
Go to Gaul.
The military.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You'll be taken care of if you go into the military. And is going into the military another way of rising up?
Yes.
Yeah, it's another rung in the ladder, so you have to have this military experience. He fights in Asia Minor for 4 years. He's gone for 4 years. And in that time, what's happening back in Rome? It's all switching back over again. So now he can, it happens that fast. It doesn't happen like that anymore, right? So he can go back. So now he's going to go back, and here is a statue of him. And we're going to stop for 1 second because we want to know at this point in time, he's gone for, so he's a 20-year-old young man. What do we know about him at this point? What have you heard about him?
He's ambitious.
Have you heard this?
Oh, yeah.
He suffered from epilepsy.
I mean, is that true?
Yeah, it's true.
Is that
It's
been
true.
proven?
Yes, well, it's been written about. He had biographers, plenty of people have written about it. Yeah, he was very, very sensitive about that. He was also sensitive about this.
Yeah, it's balding.
Yes, premature balding, and he was very upset about that because he was very meticulous about the way he looked, and that was upsetting to him. He was also known for being in great physical shape. And then here is the thing we need to know more than anything else. Can you see?
Boundless ambition.
So Esther, boundless ambition, like without any stops. This man was ambitious. So he has to do something because what's the highest level you can reach in politics in Rome at this time?
A senator and a consul.
A consul, exactly. And you have to be 42 years old, at least 42 years old, to be elected to consul. So he's only 20, he's got a long way to go, and he's thinking to himself, I need to develop some skills. One of the skills that he needs to, this is Cicero, by the way. What is Cicero known for?
Oratory.
Exactly. And he knows that if he wants to build his career, he needs to be a great speaker. And so he wants to go to Rhodes. He's going to go to Rhodes, and he's going to study with a Greek tutor, and that's going to help him with his oration. So he's traveling, he's at sea, on his way to Rhodes to become a great orator. And while he's at sea, what happens to him?
There's a rebellion.
What?
He's captured by the slaves. I mean, by the
Pirates. Remember we talked about that? Yeah, this very incident is what made me think to do this, because when we were doing pirates, nobody seemed to be aware of it, and you were like amazed. Well, I've held back a little bit of the detail, and so I can share that with you now. All right, so he is on his way to Rhodes to learn how to speak better, and he is captured by pirates. He's got some men with him, because you wouldn't travel alone, of course. And so when he's captured, they figure, you know what, we're gonna hold him for ransom, this guy, he's important. And so they say the ransom is 20 talents of silver. All right? Julius Caesar is indignant that they would only ask 20 talents of silver for him. Julius Caesar himself ups the ransom, and he says, I'm worth more than that. Ask for 50. Ask for 50. So they do. Julius Caesar is upping his own ransom, so his guys are running off to get this ransom. In the meantime, the pirates have him held hostage on a deserted island. And what is Julius Caesar doing while they're out there on the island, you know, passing the time waiting for the 50 talents of silver? Well, he's on his way to practice his speech, and he's written some very impressive poetry. Very impressive poetry, and he has an audience, right? Like, what else are the pirates doing? So he decides he's going to read some of his poetry to the pirates. And this, what?
Bedtime story.
And this man is so audacious that when they weren't duly impressed by his poetry, he told them he was going to have them hanged. He's the prisoner.
yeah.
He's the one being held captive, and he was so irritated, and he called them ignorant savages. He called them ignorant savages for not appreciating his excellent poetry, and that when this whole ordeal is over with, he's going to find them and he's going to hang them because they're just too ignorant. So the guys come back and they have the 50 talents of silver, and what does Julius Caesar do? Well, after it was paid and they released him, he went after them, all right? He captured them, he got his silver back, he cut their throats and had them crucified.
That's
Nice man.
Nice guy.
Well, he was a nice guy, really. In Roman times at this time, you could have just crucified them and not cut their throats. Because cutting their throats did what?
They brought it to us.
They lit up.
Hastens the death, right?
Yeah.
How long does it take if you're crucified?
Days.
Days. So actually, out of respect for them, he came away with some kind of respect for them. Is this like, does this boggle the mind?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We can't relate to this thinking, but it was a gesture of respect to cut their throats. All right, and then why would you, I don't know. Anyways, yes, I live in a time far, far, far away from this. I can't relate in any way at all. Okay, so he's got to go to Rhodes and he's got to improve himself. All right, he does that. He's doing that. Now, he comes across a statue of Alexander the Great. And at this point in time, Julius Caesar is a 30-year-old man. He's 30 years old. And he's just still trying to speak well, right? He's got a little bit of military service under his belt, some accolades for that. But what did Alexander the Great do at the same age?
He already conquered.
He's already conquered the world. Exactly right, Judy. He has already conquered the world. It is said that Julius Caesar, when he saw the statue of Alexander the Great, and he pondered the two lives, that he wept. That he wept. He was so discouraged about that. He goes back to Rome, and some good fortune befalls him. He marries a woman with, I don't know, did you get my little subtle hint here? Oh, she's got money. Well, you know what? This opens up a whole brand new world for this ambitious man. All right? So he's...
Can he marry? Well, how many women can he marry?
Yeah, what happened?
Oh, his other wife died. Oh, thank you, because I forgot to say that. So his first wife died,
And you can divorce in that time.
and you could divorce. Yeah, it happened all the time. It happened constantly. So she passed away, and he married this woman with, she was very, very, very wealthy. So that was really great for him, and he wasted no time putting that money to good use, you know, for him personally. All right, so he becomes a senator. He enters the Senate, and now he can wear the robe with the purple. He can do that now, but he's not respected by the other patricians. He's not respected as one of the top, most powerful people. Do you think he's going to settle for that?
No.
He's not going to settle for that at all. As a matter of fact, he thinks to himself, okay, fine, you guys want to be that way? Then I'm just going to go in the complete opposite direction. And where does he go? He goes to the poor people. He goes to the common people. He goes out into the streets, the dirty streets, where the other patricians will not go because it's foul, and they're above that. And he shakes hands and kisses babies and does all that stuff that politicians do. He's out there with the common people. One of the things, and they love him for it, he speaks to them just so easily and treats them very well, and they're really responding to that. Now, one of the other things that you're responsible for in this hierarchy of the senates is the games, right? You know the games. The Colosseum. Well, the Colosseum's not built quite yet, all right? But what we do have in Caesar's time is the Circus Maximus. And he is responsible. Now remember, his wife has what?
Right.
So he's spending lavish amounts of money on these great productions. Now you might have heard of some of them, all right? Some of them are exotic animals from other lands. Can you imagine how much money it would cost to bring all these exotic animals in? Have you ever heard of the mock sea battles?
No.
Yeah, they filled,
Coliseum, but not the...
yeah, they filled it with water, and they had mock sea battles as entertainment. And then there's the entertainment that we already know about, right?
Chariot races.
Chariot races, gladiator fights. Well, it was Julius Caesar who went over the top on those kind of, routine sources of entertainment. He went over the top, and the people were crazy about him. Absolutely crazy about him. I found, I'm going to share this with you. I found a reconstruction, a 3D animated reconstruction of the Circus Maximus. Those 3D animations are amazing, aren't they? I love them. So who can go to the circus? Who can go to the games?
The vegans.
People?
Everyone. Does it matter what class you are? It does not matter. Absolutely everyone can go. And hundreds of thousands of people can fit in there. So everybody's in there. It's the only time when there is no class, there is no distinction. Everybody can go. It's for the public, for everyone. All right, so for once, you're all at the same level. So the people love him for that. And that night, he's also throwing wonderful banquets and dinners for the nobility. So during the day, he's out there taking, taking walks in the dirty streets, talking to the average people, and in the evening, he's a totally different guy. He's throwing banquets, and who's he doing this with? Whose money is he doing this?
His wife.
And is that gonna run out? Yeah, he's probably, it's gonna run out. So he has to run for an office that will give him some payback. In the office that he runs for, it's called the Supreme Priest. All right, it's the Supreme Priest. Now, we're not thinking pontiff like we're thinking today. All right, we're not thinking priest like we're thinking today. No, this is, who are the gods? Look at this one. This is the duty of the Supreme Priest. All right, they have to do ceremonies in case there's pestilence or lightning. The Supreme Priest could stop the Senate if there was thunder, because thunder, if the Supreme Priest heard thunder, that's a bad sign and he can shut the whole thing down. Because it's not good, we can't go on. All right? This one, he regulates the calendar. Why would that be? Do they see signs in the stars and the heavens and the skies and all of that? So that's important, all right? They take care of, who's going to get married and who can marry who, adoption and testimony of succession. This one's great, regulating the public for their morals and finding them. All right, and you're also responsible for selecting the Vestal Virgins. All right, so that's the office. What?
So back to that one.
Back to that one. That was a big thing, right? So now he's running for this office. He's done everything to make himself loved by all classes, right? So do you think he won? Yeah, he won. He won by a landslide. He won by a landslide. So this man who's coming up out of nowhere is now gaining the attention of the highest in the Senate because do you think they see him as dangerous?
Yeah.
He is dangerous because who does he have now in his back pocket?
All the plebs.
Yes, he has all the plebs, hundreds of thousands. Remember how overpopulated the city is? They love him. And then he's got a lot of the senators because he has invited them to these great banquets. And so now the two men that we met last week, remember these guys? Crassus and Pompey? They're the consuls, and they know that they either have to get rid of him. That's going to be hard to do, isn't it? If you've got that kind of backing, or they have to join forces. And so what do?
Join forces?
Yeah, they join forces. So this is called the first triumvirate. And so now, instead of the two consuls, we've got a political alliance of these three men. And because they are the two most powerful men in Rome at the time, they are able to get Caesar elected early, and now he becomes consul. That was his highest aspiration, right? It was. So he does it, he gets there, he's consul for a year, because remember it can only be a year. All right, so then what? Oh, been there, done that. Do you think that's going to satisfy him? He's 40 years old. He's 40 years old. So it's a huge letdown. He reached the pinnacle of where he could be, and then it's over with. Now, after you're a consul, they'll assign you a governorship. They put him right at the border of Rome and Gaul. It's Gaul at the time. And the reason why they want to put him there is because there is a little tribe, a nomadic tribe, the Helvetii, that's starting to come in. They're starting to bother them. So they're going to send Caesar there, and he's going to take care of that little problem, which he does. No big deal. He's able to take care of that pretty quickly. But then what does he do? Does he stop there? Then Julius Caesar goes and he conquers all of Gaul, all of this land. Was that approved by the Senate? No, he just did it. He just did it on his own. And then where did he go after that? Yes. Yeah, he went to England. And that was not approved either. While he's doing all of these conquering, and he took over 60 tribes. He conquered over 60 tribes. He was gone for 8 years. The whole time he's gone, he is himself overseeing the accounts that are going back to Rome. All right, so he himself is making sure he knows every word in the record of what was happening that went back to Rome. And how do you think that read?
He was a hero.
Oh, he was absolutely the hero. He was doing everything himself. He was doing it flawlessly. These are glowing reports that Caesar is writing that is going back to the Senate in Rome. And what do you think the people? They're loving it, right? They're hearing all of these great stories about battles and takeovers and what he had to do and how brilliant a commander he is, and they're loving these stories. And the Senate is very worried because if you have a quota, there's a quota All right, if you in battle kill over 5,000 people, I know, I'm sorry I have to say this, but it's true, that's what it was like. You would get a parade down the streets in the city of Rome. Now that's what he wants. He wants the grand parade down the city of Rome. And would that give him even more power and influence with the people? Yeah, absolutely. So, what is Cicero doing in the Senate?
Watch out for this guy.
He's out of control, he's out of control, this is dangerous. Here's what he says. This is what Cicero says. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. The enemy at the gate is less formidable, for he is known and he carries his banner openly, but the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely. His sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. And because Cicero, who is such a great speaker, he is able to convince Pompey, remember they have an alliance? He's able to convince him this man is dangerous and we have to go up against him, we have to stop him, he has a higher ambition, and it's not for the Republic. Now, we also have Crassus, remember Crassus? Crassus has died in battle elsewhere. He's died in battle. He's not, so this triumvirate is broken down. The triumvirate is broken down at this point. So, as Caesar, after 8 years, is coming back with his troops, he's coming back down through Gaul, and he's expecting what? A parade. He is fully expecting this grand procession and people cheering him and throwing, I don't know what they threw back then. Did they have confetti? Flowers, and yes. That's what he's expecting, but he gets to the Rubicon and he gets word that he is told to stop and surrender his forces. That he is supposed to surrender his forces. So instead of what he fully expects is his right, his men are being taken from him. And what essentially they're saying is, we don't want you with an army to come into Rome because we're concerned that you don't have good motives. So we're taking your army away and then you can come on your own without that power behind you. All right? And it's in this moment that Julius Caesar makes a huge, critical decision. And what is that decision?
They crossed the river.
Yes, this is the famous saying, you've all heard this, right? The die is cast. And a dice, of course, is used in gambling. So it has a double meaning, doesn't it? Like, the die is cast, meaning I can't go back. I'm crossing the river, I'm going in with my troops, and there is no going back, but also because he uses a gambling metaphor, he's also saying, and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how this will turn out. All right? But he goes through, and what do the people do? They let him walk right through. They just open the doors wide open and he can come through. So now the Senate is pretty terrified, aren't they? Here comes Caesar with all his armies. He didn't surrender them. With his armies coming back in, the people are cheering him, letting him through. He has no resistance whatsoever. So the senators in Rome, they have to get out of there, don't they? And who's the leader? Do you remember who the leader is? Pompey. Pompey's the leader. So Pompey's got to get out of there because now it's a civil war. This ignites civil war when he crosses the Rubicon. And it's Julius Caesar against Pompey. Pompey flees. he's gonna go, he wants to go to Egypt. He thinks he's got a stronghold there in Egypt. So he sends word to Ptolemy, who's in rule at the time. And he says, would you accept me? I need to come for your protection. All right, Ptolemy, he's in a tough spot. Right? He's in a very tough spot.
Called the rock of the high.
Yes. He's in a really difficult position because Pompey's powerful, Caesar's powerful. What do I do? If I let this guy in and I give him protection, but Caesar overthrows him, then Caesar's mad at me and my people. So what do I do? What do I do? Well, I guess it didn't take Ptolemy too long to figure out what to do, because you know Caesar's in hot pursuit of Pompey, right? And when he gets to Egypt, Ptolemy has a little gift for him. The gift that he has for him is the head of Pompey. So Ptolemy decided, okay, I know what I need to do here. He told Pompey, yes, come, you can come, we'll accept you. And as soon as he arrives, they tackle him and off with his head. So he presents the head of his enemy to Caesar, and Caesar feigns this like horror, you know, because of course he did him a huge favor, right? Because he didn't do it, so he doesn't have to explain that back in Rome. Someone did it for him. What can you do? He wasn't even there. So he didn't. So he must have. He feigned this like, oh, this is terrible, terrible, terrible. All right. Well, Ptolemy's not the only one in this political conflict. I just said that wrong. Caesar's not the only one. Ptolemy too is in political conflict. Egypt is having its own issues because who is trying to lead the country in Egypt?
There's always a brother and sister who are.
Yes, the brother, that's right, Judy, the brother and sister. So Ptolemy was supposed to marry his sister. Do you know who the sister is? Yes, exactly, Cleopatra. That was common. They didn't realize the ramifications of that. They thought they were keeping the bloodline pure. But Cleopatra refused. She refused because it would mean she would be submissive to her brother, and she knew that she would be a better ruler. She just had a lot of confidence. Well, Ptolemy just handed Caesar his enemy's head, so she knows she's going to do something to convince him to come to her side, because she wouldn't marry her brother. So she does. She has herself, did you all hear this story before? She has herself rolled up in a carpet and smuggled in to Caesar, and then the carpet's unrolled, and there she is, Cleopatra. And then from this tale, whether that happened or not, remains to be seen. Everybody's just taken off like gangbusters on she must be beautiful and seductive, and not really understanding what the history says. Here's what the history says. These are coins with depictions of Cleopatra. I'm sorry, guys, that I've probably disappointed you. But that is the likeness of Cleopatra. And Plutarch writes that it was her charm, her knowledge, her intelligence, more than her physical appearance that was so attractive to men. So she was very unique. So it wasn't so much the way she looked as it was her personal ability to persuade people and her persona. So anyway, she must have won him over, because the next thing you know, it is Julius Caesar and Cleopatra traveling up the Nile, taking a tour, a sightseeing tour, right? And they are very clearly together. Shortly after that, Julius Caesar rides back into Rome, and he's a hero. And why is he a hero? He just stopped the Civil War, right? He put it down fairly quickly. He's made an alliance with Egypt, and at this time, Egypt is the breadbasket. They are the greatest producer of wheat at the time. So if he's got a strong alliance with Egypt, does Rome have bread? So he's done that. So he's seen as this huge, huge hero, and the people are demanding that they name him, the Senate name him dictator, not dictator as we think of, but dictator as is defined in that political system at the time, a time of emergency. So what they want is, okay, we just went through a civil war and we want him to lead us out of that trouble. So they name him dictator. Does Julius Caesar find that he's satisfied with that? That's higher than consul, right?
But it's only short term.
But it's only supposed to be for 6 months, right? Well, he's kind of loving it, and he's doing a few things to let people know that he's loving it maybe a little too much. First of all, you're supposed to wear the white robe with the purple, right? Julius Caesar starts wearing all purple. All purple. Does that distinguish him from even the senators? Yes. So now he's done something to distinguish himself alone. He's alone. He's not 100 or 200 of the patricians. He is by himself, entirely purple. Why is purple imperial? Why is it so important? Well, it's because purple then came from a sea snail that excreted a purplish, that was the dye they used. So can you imagine how expensive it would be to collect these snails and crush them? And so it was pretty expensive. And that's why it's the imperial purple. Now, he was also doing something else, or I guess it's what he wasn't doing.
He was pushing his
He's dictator. He's dictator. He's not relinquishing. He's not letting go. All right? And then, he's come back to Rome, but he didn't come back alone. All right? He had somebody with him. He had Cleopatra with him. And he's commissioned a statue in her likeness, and her likeness with a child. Who's the child?
Supposedly his.
Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. What nationality is Cleopatra, by the way?
She's,
Everyone thinks she's Egyptian?
no, she's Mesopotamia or something? Greek?
Yeah, she's Greek.
Oh, Greek, yeah.
Yeah, remember Alexander the Great conquered
Yeah.
Greece? Yeah, so she's Greek. She's not Egyptian. All right, so she's got a son. What is this looking like to the Senate? And he's commissioned the statue of her as a mother in Rome. Do they do that kind of thing in Rome? That's for the gods, right? That's going to be for Diana and for, the gods in Olympia. And yet he's doing that. What is he trying to set up? What does it look like he's trying to set up?
A dynasty.
Exactly. Is that making the Senate nervous?
Yeah.
Nervous enough to do what?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we all know what happens as a result of that. The Ides of March. They kill him. He has a great quote. He doesn't have a bodyguard, and he says it's better to die once than to live every day in fear. I don't know, but I guess if you had a bodyguard, you might live more days. I don't know. I guess it's just up for grabs. So when he dies, Oh boy, when he dies, I'm gonna try to finish this. It's discovered that he has an adopted son. He adopted a young man. Nobody knew. He adopted this young man. This is his great nephew, Octavian. All right? Octavian's father dies when he's 4, and the grandmother really raises him. The grandmother, her name's Julia. Guess who she is? She's the sister of Julius Caesar. So this is his great nephew, and he on paper has adopted him, and so now he realizes he's got sudden incredible power. And with this power, he's going to establish the second triumvirate. You can't see that, I'm sorry, it got cut off up there. All right, with the other 2 powerful people in the Senate. Lepidus doesn't really amount to much, so we're not going to focus on him, but we know this guy, right? Yes, all right. So now Octavian, who's only 18 years old, presents himself as somebody who is easily manipulated, because that's how people are going to perceive him, and that is how he masterfully manipulates all of them, including Cicero, the great Cicero. But I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. Octavian gives, in this alliance, his sister to Antony to stronger form that alliance. And what's going on with Cleopatra after Caesar dies? She's got to get out of there, right? Because they're not happy. They don't like her. They don't want her there. They think her son's really in danger, because that's what they're all concerned about, that he's going to become a king. So she goes back to Egypt. In the meantime, the new triumvirate, the new 3 powers, decide the best way to rule in the absence of Caesar as dictator is to divide the kingdom. All right, so Octavian's over here. They send Antony to the west. And now who's out that way? Cleopatra. So now he falls deeply, deeply, deeply in love with her. And she's a powerful alliance for him. And now there's a power struggle between Octavian and Antony. They each want the whole thing. Now remember, Antony is married to Octavian's sister, right? She was with him in Egypt while he's having an affair with Cleopatra. Is this all too much for you, Pat?
Oh, yeah, this is
Yeah.
way beyond me.
I have to remember all these details. I've got all these details in my head. All right? So he sends her away. He sends her back to Rome. How do you think Octavian feels about that?
He doesn't like it.
He's very upset about that. He's very, very, very offended by that. So he starts he starts a smear campaign against Antony, saying he's turned Egyptian, he's worshiping weird gods, not our normal gods. You know, they have the normal gods. And he's married her illegally. They have 3 children. Antony and Cleopatra have 3 children. He's giving her lands, not approved of by the Senate. So she's gaining all of these lands, and ultimately Octavian has just had enough. And what does he do?
He decides to go to war.
Yeah, he declares war on Egypt because he knows Antony's going to side with Cleopatra. So he's really declaring war on him. So much for that triumvirate. All right, and then that is the very last battle. That's the last battle. Antony loses. Octavian wins. Mark Antony and Cleopatra both commit suicide. Yeah, rather than rather than face the penalty. And ultimately what happens?
Well, Octavian becomes the emperor of Rome.
Yes, yes. He convinces the Senate to give him the title Augustus, which means August, respected, revered. All right, and he's got the name Caesar because he's been adopted by Julius Caesar. All right, and he becomes the very first emperor of Rome. That battle between Antony and Octavian ends the Republic forever. It now has their first emperor. We have to tie up a couple of loose ends. Remember, she has a son, Caesarion, and then she has 2 boys and 1 girl with Antony. All right. Octavian kills Caesarion. He was 12 years old because he would have been Caesar's heir. However, the 3 children by Antony, he actually takes them and gives them to his sister. Remember Octavia, who was shunned by her husband, is now raising the children from her husband and his mistress. I just thought I would share that with you. Do you remember when Caesar was the supreme priest and he was in charge of the calendar?
Yeah.
All right, well, he was in charge of the calendar and he saw some problems with that. So he decided he was going to make it more precise, and he did that. And so we had the Julian calendar, and another change was made. He made it 365 days. And then the next change that was made, he didn't do it. This was done after him. All right, so the 5th month was named Quintilis. And then later on, after his death, because Julius Caesar was born in the month of Quintilis, they changed it to the month of Julius, and that's why we have our month of July. Our month of July is named after Julius Caesar. Pat, I can tell this is just all too much. Way too much. All right, I have a couple of minutes of something very soothing and relaxing, because I knew this was a lot of detail. Let me just give you a beautiful, beautiful reconstruction of Rome. You're going to enjoy it. It'll be worth a couple of minutes that you spent.